The story of Jenny and Sumit has always been one of the most polarizing in the Fiancé universe. It's a narrative built on a foundation of deception. A shocking lie that somehow against all odds blossomed into what we were told was true love. We all remember the moment the truth came out. Sumit, the young man from India, wasn't Michael Jones, the handsome English gentleman from his profile. He was a catfish. It was a staggering betrayal. Yet, Jenny forgave him. For a decade, we've watched them fight his family, his culture, and their own past to be together. We've seen the tears, the heartbreak, and the eventual triumph of their wedding. We accepted the story that Sumit made a foolish, desperate mistake in his youth, but that the love he found with Jenny was real, the one beautiful accident. That came from a pathetic lie. But what if that's not the story at all? What if the original lie wasn't a mistake, but a profession? What if the love story we've been watching for years is actually the cover-up for a crime? An explosive report has just been broken by a team of investigative journalists, and it's based on the testimony of a whistleblower, a man who claims to have worked with Sumit Singh. And according to him, Michael Jones was not a one-off persona. It was an asset. An alias in an organized professional catfishing ring. Runs out of a New Delhi call center designed to defraud lonely Westerners out of their life savings. According to this report, Jenny wasn't his one true love. She was just the one mark he couldn't get rid of. If your mind is already spinning and you, like me, feel like everything you thought you knew about this story is about to be turned upside down, then you need to do 3 things for me right now. Hit that like button, subscribe to the Tell All Tapes, and ring that notification bell because we are about to go down a rabbit hole so deep it might just change the way you see Fiancé forever. This is not just gossip. This is an alleged criminal conspiracy. And we have all the gut-wrenching details. The story begins not on a reality TV set, but in the flickering fluorescent light of a true crime documentary. The documentary, titled Digital Ghosts: The Guru Graham Connection, was a deep dive into the sophisticated call center scams that have plagued Western countries for years. It detailed how these operations had evolved from simple tech support scams into complex, emotionally devastating romance rackets. A man sitting in his small apartment in Nida watched it. Let's call him Rohan. The pseudonym he's using to protect himself from his former employers. As the documentary detailed the psychological tactics, the scripting, and the grooming process used by these professional catfish, a cold sweat trickled down Rohan's spine. He wasn't just watching a documentary. He was watching a replay of his old life. He recognized the playbook. He recognized the methodology because a decade ago, he was one of them. And so, he claims with Sumit Singh. Rohan told journalists that seeing Sumit and Jenny's faces flash across his television screen on Fiancé over the years had been a source of private torment for him. He saw a man he knew as a quiet, calculating colleague, now playing the part of a lovelorn romantic hero. He saw a woman, Jenny, who was supposed to be a target, a Night and Gale, as they called them in the office, now being presented to the world as a soulmate. The guilt, he said, was a constant, dull ache. The documentary was the final push. He realized that by staying silent, he was complicit in a lie far grander than anyone could possibly imagine. He decided to come forward. He reached out to an investigative journalist, Alia Khan, who had a reputation for untangling complex digital crimes. His first email was cryptic, simply stating, "I know the truth about the Fiancé star Sumit Singh. Michael Jones was not his idea. It was a company profile, and Jenny was his failed assignment." Alia Khan was, of course, skeptical. The world of reality TV is filled with rumors and disgruntled acquaintances. But something in Rohan's tone, a mixture of fear and conviction, compelled her to arrange a secure, encrypted call. Over the next several hours, Rohan laid out a story so detailed and chilling that it left the seasoned journalist speechless. He described an operation run out of a nondescript office building in a dusty corner of New Delhi. It wasn't your typical sprawling call center. It was a boutique operation, maybe your employees, all young, fluent in English, and tech-savvy. They weren't selling anything. They were selling a fantasy. The operation, internally known as Project Starlight, specialized in long-con romance scams. Their targets were almost exclusively middle-aged or older women in the US, Canada, the UK, and Australia. The company's founder, a shadowy figure known only as Mr. Gupta, believed this demographic was the perfect mark. Often lonely, financially secure, and less likely to be suspicious of a man who used flowery, old-fashioned language. Rohan explained that new recruits like him and Sumit underwent a rigorous week training program. They were taught how to create convincing fake profiles, how to use VPNs and burner numbers to mask their location, and most importantly, Borson, they were taught the method. This was the company's proprietary system of psychological manipulation, a step-by-step guide to making a stranger fall in love with a ghost. And part of that training involved studying the company's portfolio of pre-made field-tested personas. There was Captain Alex, the ruggedly handsome pilot who was always in a different exotic location. There was Dr. Ben, the compassionate doctors without borders physician working in a war-torn country. And then there was the company's most reliable, most successful persona, Michael Jones, the lonely English engineer. According to Rohan, Michael Jones was a masterpiece of fictitious character design. The backstory was always the same. Some structural engineer based in London. A widower whose wife had died tragically young. He was cultured. Enjoyed poetry, classic rock, and long walks. He was portrayed as a man of substance and old-world charm, a stark contrast to the men the targets might meet on dating apps. The profile was a carefully curated collection of photos, all licensed from an obscure stock photo website featuring a moderately handsome, non-threatening-looking model. The call center had a library of hundreds of these photos. Michael at a pub. Michael walking his golden retriever. Michael thoughtfully looking out over the English countryside. It was a complete illusion. Rohan alleges that Sumit did not invent Michael Jones. He was simply assigned the profile. It was his job from AM to PM. Days a week to be Michael Jones. He, along with 4 other agents, all operated various Michael Jones accounts simultaneously, targeting different women across the globe. The scam, as Rohan outlined it, was a meticulous 3-phase operation. Phase 1 was the inception. This was the love bombing stage, which could last anywhere from 2 months. The agents, following a detailed script, would shower the target with affection. They would send good morning texts, poems they wrote, pulled from a database of romantic literature, and spend hours in late-night chats, listening to the women's problems, learning their insecurities, their dreams, their deepest vulnerabilities. The goal was to create an unshakable emotional bond, to become the most important person in the target's life. They were trained to mirror the target's language, to echo her sentiments, to become her perfect counterpart. Sumit, Rohan claimed, was particularly good at this phase. He was patient, empathetic, and had a knack for saying exactly what the women wanted to hear. Phase 2 was the foundation of crisis. Once the emotional dependency was established, the agent would slowly begin to introduce elements of struggle and hardship into Michael Jones's life. It would start small. A business deal that was facing unexpected hurdles. A piece of vital equipment that broke down, a younger sister who needed help with university fees. These were tests designed to gauge the target's willingness to offer financial support. They wouldn't ask for money directly at this stage. They were planting seeds, conditioning the target to see Michael as a good man, constantly beset by misfortune, making the eventual larger crisis feel plausible. Phase 3, the final stage, was the storm. This is where the trap was sprung. The agent would manufacture a sudden catastrophic emergency. A terrible car accident, a sudden life-threatening medical diagnosis, being mugged, and having all his money and documents stolen while on a business trip abroad. The stories were dramatic, terrifying, and always required a large, immediate wire transfer of thousands of dollars. The script for this phase was precise. The agent was to sound desperate, ashamed to ask for help, and promise to pay it all back as soon as the crisis was averted. Once the money was received, the agent would begin a slow fade, becoming more and more distant until Michael Jones disappeared forever, leaving the victim heartbroken and thousands of dollars poorer. The operation was brutally effective. Rohan estimates that in the 2 years he and Sumit worked there, Project Starlight built victims out of well over $1 million. But with Jenny, something went catastrophically wrong for Sumit. He was deep in phase 1. Building the emotional connection. He had been Michael Jones for her for months, weaving the intricate web of lies as instructed. But he underestimated Jenny's impulsiveness and the depth of her genuine feelings. Before he could even begin to see the foundation of crisis, Jenny did something no target was ever supposed to do. She bought a plane ticket. She announced she was flying to India to meet the man she loved in person. Rohan described the day Sumit got that news in the office. It was sheer panic. He said Sumit went white as a sheet. An agent losing control of a mark was a serious offense. But a mark physically showing up in their city, that was unheard of. It was a DEFCON situation. Their manager, Mr. Gupta, was furious. A physical meetup risked exposing the entire operation. It could lead to police reports, media attention, and the end of their multi-million-dollar enterprise. The standard protocol in this situation was simple. Initiate the ghost protocol. The agent was to immediately block the target on all platforms, delete the email account, and sever all contact. The Michael Jones persona would simply cease to exist. Mr. Gupta ordered Sumit to do just that. But Sumit, for reasons Rohan can only speculate on, hesitated. Perhaps he was scared of what Jenny might do if she arrived in a foreign country and realized she'd been scammed. A jilted, furious American woman going to the embassy or the local police was a nightmare scenario. Or perhaps, and this is the more chilling possibility, Sumit saw a different kind of opportunity. Maybe he thought he could handle it, that he could somehow juggle the lie-in person, string her along, and still find a way to execute the scam. Whatever his reasoning, Sumit broke protocol. He didn't ghost Jenny, and when she landed in Delhi, he was there to meet her at the airport. From that moment on, Rohan alleges Sumit's life became a desperate high-wire act. He was no longer just a call center agent. He was a lone operative trying to contain a massive intelligence breach. His relationship with Jenny wasn't a romance. It was a damage control operation. This new lens recasts every strange and secretive action we saw in their first season. Why did Sumit take Jenny to his friend's apartment instead of his family home? The show told us it was to hide her from his disapproving parents. But the whistleblower suggests a different reason. He had to hide her from his employers at the call center. He couldn't risk Mr. Gupta or his colleagues knowing that the American mark was living just a few kilometers away. His entire life was compartmentalized, not between a wife and a girlfriend, but between his real family and the evidence of his failed criminal assignment. The journalist Aliyah Khan knew that Rohan's story, however compelling, was just an allegation without corroboration. So, she began to dig. Rohan, racked with guilt, provided her with a treasure trove of inside information. He gave her 3 other aliases that he knew for a fact Sumit had personally operated from his terminal. David Carter, Richard P.Y., and Andrew Whitehall. He also gave her the general script patterns and key phrases they were all trained to use. Armed with this, Aaliyah Khan spent weeks scouring the dark corners of the internet, scam reporting websites, online support groups for victims of romance fraud, and forgotten forums from the late S. And then she found them. First, she found a post from a woman in Toronto, Canada named Brenda. In a heartbreaking post from Brenda detailed how she had lost over $1 to a man she met online named David Carter, an English engineer. She had posted the photos he had sent her. They were the exact same photos of the man we all know as Michael Jones. The story she told was a textbook execution of the Project Starlight playbook. 6 months of intense online romance followed by a sudden crisis. David's teenage daughter, he claimed, had been diagnosed with a rare form of leukemia and needed an experimental treatment in Switzerland that wasn't covered by insurance. He was ashamed to ask, but he was desperate. Brenda, deeply in love with David and his fictional daughter, drained her savings account to help. The moment the final transfer went through, David Carter vanished. Then Aaliyah found another one, a woman named Eleanor from Leeds in the UK. Her scammer's name was Richard P.Y. The photos were once again a perfect match for Michael Jones. Eleanor's story was eerily similar, but the crisis was different. Richard was supposedly on an engineering contract in Dubai when his passport and all his money were stolen by a corrupt business partner, leaving him stranded and unable to return home. He needed £1 to bribe an official to get an emergency exit visa. Eleanor, a retired school teacher, took out a loan to send him the money. The day the money arrived, Richard's accounts went silent. The emails Aaliyah Khan exchanged with these women were tragic. Both Brenda and Eleanor were still emotionally scarred, not just by the financial loss, but by the profound violation of trust. When Aaliyah showed them a picture of Sumit Singh, they didn't recognize him. But when she showed them the photos of Michael Jones, they both broke down. It was him. It was the man they had loved. This was the corroboration Aaliyah needed. It demonstrated a clear pattern of behavior. The same photos, the same profession, the same MO targeting multiple women in different countries simultaneously. This wasn't a lonely boy in a call center making a one-time mistake. This was allegedly a professional, a serial operator working as part of a larger criminal enterprise. The story was becoming more solid, but Rohan knew the journalist needed something undeniable, a piece of evidence that could not be refuted. He told her he had one last thing for her, the holy grail of their entire operation. He had kept a digital copy of the company's training manual. The Scammer's Playbook, a PDF file titled The Starlight Method, a guide to conversational alchemy. He had saved it on an old USB drive, a piece of insurance he had kept hidden for nearly a decade. After days of wrestling with his conscience, terrified of the potential repercussions, he uploaded the file to a secure server and sent the link to Aaliyah Khan. When she opened the document, she knew she had the smoking gun. It was a page corporate training manual complete with a table of contents, flowcharts, and scripted dialogue trees. It was a cold, calculating step-by-step guide to manufacturing love and exploiting loneliness for profit. The manual was divided into sections: target acquisition and psychological profiling, the art of the love bomb, building dependency, crisis fabrication, and urgency tactics, and most chillingly, a chapter on persona crafting. This chapter contained detailed backstories, personality traits, and even vocabulary lists for each of the company's fake profiles. And there it was on page. Persona Profile B. Michael Jones, the wounded gentleman. The profile description was hauntingly specific. Subject is a British structural engineer, aged, widower, wife Sarah, died of cancer 3 years prior. This backstory elicits immediate sympathy and explains his reluctance to date locally. He should be portrayed as sensitive, slightly old-fashioned, and lonely. Hobbies include reading classic literature, listening to bands like Dire Straits and Pink Floyd, and taking long walks in the countryside. He has a golden retriever named Winston. This adds a layer of warmth and responsibility. It was a complete fabrication. A character cooked up in a boardroom to be the perfect emotional bait. But the most damning part was the appendix. It contained sample opening emails, conversational scripts, and excuse templates. Aaliyah Khan's hands trembled as she pulled up the screenshots of the first emails Jenny had ever received. From Michael Jones, the ones Jenny herself had shared on the show during their first season. She put them side by side with the scripts from the playbook. They were a near-perfect match. The playbook sample opening email read, "My dearest ex, I stumbled upon your profile quite by accident. A little beacon of light in this vast digital sea. I must confess, I am a bit of an old soul, and I was struck by the kindness in your eyes. I hope this message doesn't seem too forward, but I felt compelled to reach out." Jenny's email from Michael. As she read it on camera began to "Hello, Jenny, my dear. I know this is forward. But I saw your profile and I was just struck by the light in your smile. I am an old soul myself and felt I had to reach out." The parallels were undeniable. The playbook had a section on handling requests for video calls, a major hurdle for the scammers. The primary excuse provided was, "My dearest, my webcam was tragically broken in a clumsy moment involving a cup of English breakfast tea. I am so sorry, my love. You will have to be content with my words and pictures for now until I can afford a new one." Fans will remember that this was the exact excuse Sumit used with Jenny for months. Another script in the playbook under the section deepening the emotional connection provided specific emotionally charged phrases to be deployed after the first month. Phrases like "I feel as though I have known you my entire life. You are my soulmate, the missing piece of my heart's puzzle. And our meeting was not an accident. It was destiny." These weren't just romantic sentiments. They were weapons. Scripted lines tested and proven to be effective at breaking down a target's emotional defenses. To think that the very words that made Jenny fall in love, the words she cherished and held on to for a decade, may have been copied and pasted from a criminal's training manual, is a betrayal almost too profound to comprehend. This playbook didn't just suggest tactics. It provided the literal words Sumit allegedly used to build his entire relationship with Jenny. The love story that fans have followed for years may not have been written in the stars, but in a PDF file designed to steal. The journalist published her story, complete with excerpts from the playbook, screenshots of the matched emails, and the anonymized but powerful testimonies of the other victims, Brenda and Eleanor. The story went viral, sending an earthquake through the Fiancé fan community. And it forces us to ask the most uncomfortable question of all. If the beginning was a scripted lie from a criminal enterprise, what does that mean for everything that came after? This new information, this alleged scammer's playbook, forces us to re-examine every single moment of Jenny and Sumit's decade-long saga. It's like discovering the blueprint for a building after you've been living in it for years, only to realize the foundation is made of sand and the walls are filled with poison. We must now go back to the beginning and watch their entire story again. Not as a romance, but as a true crime thriller where the protagonist doesn't even know she's in danger. The victim is Jenny, and the crime is the complete and total fabrication of the love she believes is real. Every tear soon shed, every heartfelt apology, every desperate plea. We must now ask if these were the genuine emotions of a conflicted man or the calculated tactics of a cornered criminal pulling pages from a playbook we never knew existed. Let's start with the most glaring piece of the puzzle, Sumit's first wife. The show presented this as a classic day fiancé storyline, a man from a traditional culture forced into an arranged marriage while his heart belongs to an American woman. It was dramatic, painful, and ultimately framed as a testament to Sumit's love for Jenny that he was willing to go through a messy, expensive divorce to be with her. But with the whistleblower's testimony in mind, this entire narrative collapses. Let's consider an alternative, much darker timeline. Sumit, the call center agent, has a failed assignment on his hands. The American Mark Jenny has shown up in Delhi, refusing to be ghosted. He is in a state of constant panic, hiding her from his employers and his family. What is the one final undeniable way to get a foreign mistress to leave your country? To prove to her irrevocably that you are unavailable getting married. Was the arranged marriage a desperate gambit? Not to please his parents, but to create the ultimate excuse, the one that would finally force Jenny to go home and cut her losses. It was the nuclear option in his damage control scenario. He could go to Jenny full of crocodile tears and say, "My love, my family has forced me into this. My life is over. We can never be together. You must go home and save yourself." It would have been the perfect tragic ending to their love story. An ending that would have painted him as a victim of circumstance and, most importantly, would have gotten the primary witness to his scam out of the country for good. But once again, he underestimated Jenny. She didn't leave. She dug in her heels. She waited. His master plan to get rid of her had backfired spectacularly, trapping him even further. Now, he wasn't just a man with a secret girlfriend. He was a married man with a secret girlfriend who knew his real name and location. The stakes had been raised exponentially. This new theory also completely reframes the role of Sumit's parents, Anil and Sana. We have spent years watching them as the primary antagonists in this story. Their relentless opposition to Jenny. Their screaming matches their threats of disownment. We chalked it all up to a cultural clash. A mother's fierce disapproval of an older woman taking her son. But what if their rage wasn't about the age gap at all? What if they had discovered their son's secret profession? Imagine the moment a devout middle-class Indian family finds out their son isn't just dating an older American woman. He's part of a criminal ring that defrauds them. The shame, the terror, the disgrace would be unimaginable. From this perspective, their hostility towards Jenny wasn't personal. It was primal fear. Jenny wasn't just an inappropriate girlfriend. She was a walking, talking piece of evidence. She was the loose end that could unravel their entire family, sending their son to prison and bringing unimaginable shame upon their name. Every time they screamed at Sumit, were they really screaming, "How could you choose this woman over your family?" Or were they screaming, "How could you be so stupid as to let a mark find you? How could you bring this danger to our doorstep?" Sana's infamous health scares and emotional breakdowns take on a new, more desperate light. Perhaps they weren't manipulative tactics to control her son's love life, but the genuine physical manifestations of the terror she was living with every single day. Knowing that this American woman held the key to her son's freedom, their desperation to get Jenny out of their house and out of their country wasn't about preserving tradition. It was about destroying evidence. They weren't trying to break up a relationship. They were trying to cover up a crime. And what about the money? This has always been a sticking point in their story. Sumit's long-term unemployment, their financial struggles, the massive dollar loan he took from his father to pay for his divorce. The show presents this as a sad reality of their situation. But in the context of a professional scamming ring, money takes on a very different meaning. Where did that dollar truly come from? Anil Sumit's father presented it as his life savings. A painful sacrifice to fix his son's mistake. But what if the money trail is more complex? Rohan the whistleblower claimed that agents who messed up, who lost control of a mark, were often held financially responsible by the operations leader, Mr. Gupta. A failed assignment wasn't just a professional failure. It was a debt. Is it possible that the dollar Sumit borrowed from his father was actually money being paid back to the criminal organization he had compromised? Money to buy their silence, to compensate for the potential loss of the Michael Jones asset, and to ensure they wouldn't expose him themselves. This could also explain Sumit's chronic inability to hold down a steady job. Was he truly struggling to find work, or was he actively avoiding it? A man with a criminal past whose primary work experience involved sophisticated digital fraud would be terrified of any job that required a background check or scrutinized his work history too closely. His call center experience was not something he could put on a resume. So he drifted, working odd jobs, starting a food business, all things that kept him off the official grid. His financial dependency on Jenny and his parents wasn't a sign of laziness. It might have been a necessary component of his long-term cover-up, a way to avoid any official scrutiny that could expose his past. He wasn't just a man trying to find his way. He was a man in hiding, living in a prison of his own making. Let's now turn our attention to Sumit's on-screen persona. For years, viewers have been divided. Is he a weak, indecisive mama's boy or a genuinely sweet man caught in an impossible situation? This new report suggests a terrifying third option, that he is a consummate actor, a master of emotional manipulation, performing the role of a lifetime. The playbook, the Starlight Method, didn't just contain opening emails. According to the journalist report, it had entire chapters on emotional mirroring, vulnerability, exploitation, and conflict de-escalation. These were the core skills of the job. To read a target's emotional state and reflect it back to them, to identify their deepest insecurities and use them to build trust, and to use apologies and self-deprecation to diffuse suspicion. Now, rewatch any argument between Sumit and Jenny. Notice the pattern. Jenny expresses her frustration, her hurt, her fear. Sumit's initial response is often silence, a deer-in-the-headlights look. Then comes the apology filled with sweeping declarations of love and promises to do better. He often cries. He tells her she is his everything, that he cannot live without her. According to the playbook of a scammer, this is a textbook de-escalation tactic. He's not resolving the conflict. He's managing the mark. He's deploying the emotional language he was trained to use to sue an upset target and restore their faith in the connection. His tears might not be tears of love or remorse, but tears of sheer agonizing stress. The stress of a man who has been improvising a lie for years, terrified that this is the day. This is the argument where the whole thing finally falls apart. He's not fighting for his relationship. He's fighting for his freedom. Every major milestone in their relationship becomes suspect. When he finally stood up to his parents, was it a man finally choosing his love, or a man realizing that his old cover story blaming his parents was no longer working, and that he needed a new strategy to keep Jenny placated? The pressure from the show, from Jenny, from the entire world watching may have forced his hand. He had to keep escalating the performance of true love to maintain the illusion. Which brings us to the wedding. The triumphant moment that fans had been waiting years for, the culmination of their struggle, or was it the final desperate move in a decade-long chess game? By marrying Jenny, Sumit achieved the ultimate cover. He legally and publicly bound himself to his former mark. In the eyes of the world, and more importantly, in the eyes of the law, their story was now officially a legitimate romance. It would be nearly impossible for anyone to now claim it was all a scam from the beginning. Who would run a con for years, go through a public and humiliating divorce, alienate his family, and then marry the victim? The marriage is his masterpiece. The final brushstroke on a portrait of deception. It wasn't an act of love. It was an act of self-preservation. It was the moment he believed he was finally safe, the moment the con became so real that it was indistinguishable from the truth. He didn't just marry Jenny, he married his alibi. This theory also sheds a chilling new light on their life as a married couple. The arguments we see now about Sumit wanting more freedom, about his desire to hang out with his friends, about Jenny's insecurities, we view them as typical newlywed squabbles. But what if they're not? What if we are watching a man who has successfully completed his mission, a mission he never wanted, and is now chafing under the reality of his prison sentence? For years, his entire existence was focused on one thing, managing Jenny. Now that she is his wife, now that the cover story is sealed, perhaps a part of him feels the performance can finally relax. His desire for freedom isn't the normal desire of a husband to have a night out. It's the desperate gasp for air of a man who has been playing a role for a third of his life and is suffocating under the weight of it. He may not even know who he truly is anymore. Is he Sumit Singh? Is he Michael Jones? Or is he just the terrified actor who has been on stage for so long that he has forgotten the way to the exit? The whistleblower Rohan stated that the goal of Project Starlight was to create a fantasy to sell a dream to lonely women. The tragic, soul-crushing irony is that for Sumi, the scam failed so spectacularly that he was forced to live inside the fantasy he was selling. He built a beautiful romantic prison and then accidentally locked himself inside it with Jenny as his warden, who doesn't even know she's holding the key. Every I love you, every tender moment, every shared laugh. We are now forced to question it all. Is it possible for a lie, if repeated for a decade, to become a kind of truth? Could Sumit, the actor, have started to believe his own lines? Or is he still to this day just reading from a script that has become so ingrained in his mind that it's second nature? This report from these investigative journalists changes everything. It suggests that Jenny isn't the partner in an unlikely love story, but the victim of arguably the longest and most elaborate gaslighting campaign in television history. She fought the world for a man who may have never been real. She gave up her home, her family, and her life savings for a relationship that was allegedly born from a criminal conspiracy. Sumit didn't choose her out of love. He was trapped by her. And every decision he has made since has been dictated not by his heart, but by a desperate need to avoid prosecution. The story of Jenny and Sumit is no longer a romance. It is a potential true crime documentary playing out in slow motion. It is a tragedy of epic proportions. So I have to ask you, the viewers, the ones who have been on this journey for years, do you believe the whistleblower? Do the pieces fit? When you re-examine the evidence of the past years through this new lens, does it all suddenly make a horrifying kind of sense? Is Sumit Singh the greatest romantic hero in day history? Or is he the most successful con artist, a man who got caught and was forced to turn a dollar scam into a lifetime commitment? This is insane. The implications are staggering, not just for them, but for our own understanding of what we've been watching all this time. I need to know what you think. Was this all a cover-up? Was their entire love story just the world's most complicated lie? Get into the comments right now and let me know. We need to talk about